Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. The 7th Shemitah of 2014 and 2015. We are in it and heading towards the close of it. Last September, I made a video titled The Rapture and the 7th Shemitah of 2014-2015. If you haven't watched it, you can type Shemitah into my channel's search tool and find it easily enough. But the point is, financial collapses always happen in a Shemitah year, which means we are looking for one to occur this fall. If you've been asking yourself, when will the American dollar collapse? I have some real news for you. It collapsed a very long time ago. But the powers that be have been doing a very good job of covering up the truth. We already know that the debt is out of control, and our leaders know it too. The fact is, they don't know what to do about it. So they pass another debt ceiling increase and hope to make it through the next election cycle. The phrase for this is kicking the can down the road. The sad truth of it all is that the system has been rigged. The Federal Reserve has been printing billions of dollars to prop up the economy and make it look like things are good. The Fed prints up to $85 billion per month and loans it to the government. The government then gives the money to the banks. The banks look at the state of the economy and see it as too risky to lend into. And so, instead, they take the money given to them and leverage it in the markets, raking in huge profits. Every American is saddled with the responsibility of this massive expansion of our national debt with the obligation to pay taxes towards it. And the banks get to play a high-stakes game of poker with our money and get wealthier at the same time. That is exactly what is happening, for now at least. This fall, however, should present a very different story, because it really is game over. As I reported in last week's newscast, many nations are turning away from the American dollar. China is creating its own bank. Russia is creating its own bank. Obama is trying to do the same. Everyone is looking to create a new world currency. Why? The world has become a global marketplace. The global population has exploded. Food production has been stressed into a need for quantity rather than quality, and everyone's health is suffering because of it. Everything is backed up against the wall, and now there's no place left to turn but to Elohim for those who have eyes that can see. All the world is running headlong at breakneck speed straight toward the grand disaster which only the lawless one, the Antichrist, will have a solution for. A one-world currency is on the horizon. The world leaders know it, and we are watching them all scramble to see who can grab the brass ring first. The next 6 months are surely going to be historic, my friends. And as I said last week, what can you do to prepare for it? Pitch your tent with Elohim. If you don't know what that means, tune in right here this Thursday. I'll be presenting a new video with that very title, and I will explain in detail how to pitch your tent with Him. Turning to wars and rumors of wars. On Tuesday, March 31st, advanced weaponry, much of it supplied by Iran, is flowing into Syria and Lebanon. A senior Israel Navy source warned last week, saying, quote, "Such weapons pose a challenge to all Western navies in the area." The man described 10 different kinds of missiles, including the 300-kilometer range Yakhont guided anti-ship missile, and warned that the missile can be used to attack targets on land deep inside the country, such as military headquarters in Tel Aviv. Further, Iran is converting Zilzal unguided rockets into accurate guided M600 missiles and smuggling them into Hezbollah in Lebanon. Colonel Aviram Hassan, a senior Israel Defense Ministry official, warned that, quote, "Iran is turning unguided rockets that had an accuracy range of kilometers into weapons that are accurate to within meters. Hezbollah is getting a lot of accurate weapons from Iran. It is in a very different place compared to the Second Lebanon War in 2006, close quote. 2 residents in the Golan Heights were arrested after documenting Israel Defense Forces activity along the northern border and passing the information along to Syrian intelligence agencies. Then, on Wednesday, April 1st, ISIS militants took over large parts of a Palestinian refugee camp in Damascus, the deepest incursion yet by ISIS militants into the Syrian capital. If they gain control of the Yarmouk camp, they can threaten President Bashar Assad's seat of power. Then on Thursday, April 2nd, ISIS militants in Syria seized new territory last week in the central province of Hama and in the Yarmouk district. Mahmoud Habash, a senior advisor to PA President Mahmoud Abbas, has called on Arab countries to launch a military strike against Gaza. Abbas himself promptly replied by saying, quote, "I hope the Arab states carry out the same policy that they are in Yemen." Attacks on 5 army checkpoints along the El Arish Rafah road in northern Sinai have left 22 dead, including 18 soldiers and 4 civilians, and more than 30 others wounded. 4 vehicles with over 20 gunmen attacked the recently erected checkpoints with RPGs and mortars. Then on Saturday, April 4th, ISIS made major gains in Syria by conquering most of a refugee enclave near Damascus. Reuters reported the radical group now controls 90% of the camp in Yarmouk, and ISIS is now knocking at the doors of Syrian President Bashar Assad only miles away in Syria's capital. The UN estimates approximately 18,000 civilians are now trapped between Assad's forces and ISIS, and Britain's Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that Syrian jets bombed ISIS positions near the camp. And then on Monday, April 6th, yesterday, intelligence sources told the Sunday Telegraph that Iran has sent Hamas tens of millions of dollars to help rebuild the network of tunnels in Gaza, which were destroyed by Israel's invasion last summer. Iran is also funding new missile supplies to replenish stocks used to bombard residential neighborhoods in Israel during the war. At least 147 students were murdered when Islamist terrorists attacked a Kenyan university, singling out Christians. Many of those killed had their throats cut. The attackers opened the doors and asked if the people inside were Muslims or Christians. If you were a Christian, you were shot on the spot, said one student. Further, after the Yarmouk Palestinian refugee camp, which is on the outskirts of Damascus, fell to ISIS, the Islamic State began accusing Palestinians of apostasy and beheading them, hanging the severed heads across the camp. ISIS has also imprisoned more than 75 children and adults in a local school. There is an Islamic doctrine called taqiyya, which permits Muslims to deceive non-Muslims. Side note, it reminds me of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They have the same doctrine. It's okay to lie to someone who is not a JW. Anyway, the Islamic prophet Muhammad himself regularly lied to his infidel enemies, often resulting in their murder. He also proclaimed that lying was permissible. Moreover, taqiyya became second nature to the Shia, the sect ruling Iran. Islamic law takes circumstance into account. Reach peace when weak, wage war when strong has been an Islamic MO for centuries. It's all very normal for Islamic leaders to say they are pursuing nuclear energy for peaceful purposes while they are weaker than their infidel foes, as Iran is today. But once they acquire nukes, the jihad can resume in earnest. The Iranians reportedly are working on both missiles and nuclear weapons. Inspections inside Iran will not give the international community access to any nuclear weapons efforts in North Korea. So, Iran could still continue developing its bomb in North Korea, conducting research there, or buying North Korean technology and plans. With the removal of sanctions, Iran will have the cash to accelerate the building of its nuclear arsenal. In other words, Iran could be 1 day away from a bomb, the flight time from Pyongyang to Tehran, not 1 year, as America hopes. It becomes more and more obvious that Iran's aggression in the Middle East is being supported by the nations of the West, my friends. Further, that once great global body known as the United Nations has been overrun by repressive regimes that violate human rights and undermine international security. Since 2012, the 120-member-strong bloc known as the Non-Aligned Movement has been chaired by Iran, which has used its position to bolster its allies and marginalize Israel. For many liberal Arab citizens, it looks like the United States is siding with the Shiites against the Sunnis. The U.S. is helping Assad, Hezbollah, and other allies of Iran stay in power, and is picking the resistance axis instead of helping potential democracies to grow. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, an organization sponsored and directed by America's new Iranian partner, has repeatedly used force to block every effort toward democracy or reform. So, why is it that Iran, which has one of the worst human rights records in the region, and which has and still is using violence all over the region, is a potential ally to the United States? On a personal note, it seems to me that all this support towards Iran equates to some sort of a subtle display of an underlying hatred for Israel. Satan's game is afoot, my friends. I mean, all my life, whenever I witnessed any form of anti-Semitism, it was always only too obvious to me that there was no reason to be found for it. But as I grew in my understanding of the Word, I discovered Satan's game. Yeshua is speaking to Israel in Matthew chapter 23, verse 39, saying, "For I declare to you, you will not see me again until you say, Baruch, blessed, magnified in worship, adored, and exalted is he who comes in the name of Yahweh." Satan knows that declaration made by Yeshua, saying that he won't return until Israel recognizes who he is. Satan figures, if he could kill all the Jews on earth, then the Jews would not be able to call out to Yeshua, and therefore Yeshua would not be able to return. No second coming. Satan wins. It's an insane idea, but Satan's an insane adversary. So, when you look at the hatred for Jews throughout the world, throughout history, when you really look at it and you see people looking down on Jews with no reason, you have to know that they are influenced by the world, acting without thinking, following the crowd, running with the entire flock of sheep off the cliff. If the lead sheep jumps off a cliff, the whole flock goes over the cliff. People act that way. They see others, "Oh, did you know he's a Jew?" And they just respond in kind. They do the same thing without thinking. It's the world's influence. Satan is the prince of the world. Satan hates Israel. There's the cause and the reason behind unreasonable hatred for Jews. And that's the newscast for this week, my friends. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath a naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.